The moment the doctor said the words, I laughed so hard I nearly fell off the chair. Though inside, my heart was doing a triple somersault of panic and disbelief. Of all the absurd things life could throw at me, this was definitely topping the charts. And there he was, Officer Nathaniel Hayes, standing next to me with that infuriatingly calm expression that made me want to punch him, hug him, and cry all at once. I never thought my life in suburban Oregon could spiral into this kind of chaos. My name is Julian Mercer, a 32-year-old beta with a penchant for classic novels, cheap coffee, and avoiding confrontation. I like things predictable, simple, and safe. Ironically, everything Nathaniel disrupted from the very second he entered my life. And now, apparently, he was responsible for the most unpredictable twist of all. The life growing inside me. The waiting room smelled faintly of antiseptic and despair, a combination that somehow seemed fitting. Nathaniel stood close enough for our shoulders to brush, though he didn't move. His uniform was pressed, his badge gleaming under the harsh fluorescent lights. But it wasn't the authority that made my stomach twist, it was the way his presence always made me feel dangerously alive. I wanted to recoil, to tell him to back off, yet my body betrayed me, leaning slightly closer without my permission. You're joking, right? I asked, a voice trembling between hysteria and a plea for sanity. My hands fidgeted with the hem of my sleeve. Nathaniel sighed, a sound both exasperating and intimate. I wish I was. But the test results don't lie, Julian. He didn't need to elaborate. The entire weight of the news pressed down on me. I was pregnant. A beta, a man who hadn't even figured out how to commit to weekend brunches, was about to be a parent. And the person next to me, the reason behind it, was someone who had unknowingly become more than just a figure of authority in my life. It had started 3 months ago under the most ridiculous circumstances. I had been mugged, well, sort of. Someone tried to snatch my backpack outside a coffee shop, and I was too flustered to put up a fight. Nathaniel happened to be patrolling the area, saw the commotion, and intervened. Classic hero entrance, right? Except he didn't just scare the thief away. He stayed with me afterward, checking if I was okay. At the time, I had been grateful, embarrassed, and inexplicably flustered. There was something about the way he moved, the way he spoke with quiet assurance, that made me feel like he could see through the flimsy walls I'd built around myself. And then he smiled, that lopsided, half-smirk, half-apology smile, and I was done. Stop staring at me like I'm a puzzle you're desperate to solve, he had said, noticing my lingering gaze. I had only laughed, a nervous, awkward sound that made him chuckle, a sound I found myself craving more often than I cared to admit. Now, sitting in the sterile office, facing the reality of this pregnancy, every memory of him came rushing back. I remembered the nights he had dropped by, checking in under the pretense of neighborhood safety, but really, it had been to see me. I remembered the way his fingers had brushed mine once, completely accidental, completely charged. And I remembered the one night I had let my guard down, let my heart run ahead of my reason. I looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time in months. Nathaniel Hayes was impossibly handsome. Sharp jawline, eyes the color of storm clouds right before rain, and a presence that demanded attention without ever raising its voice. But more than that, he had this inexplicable softness when it came to Maya side of him the uniform and badge couldn't cover. That soft, careful attention was what made me fall into him, and now what had led to this utterly insane scenario. How did this even happen? My voice cracked. I wanted to be mad, terrified, confused, but mostly, I just wanted to understand. Nathaniel ran a hand through his dark hair, the gesture casual but intimate, and his gaze softened. We didn't exactly plan for it, but we're going to figure it out. Together. The word made my chest tighten. I had spent most of my adult life avoiding entanglements, avoiding responsibilities, avoiding the kind of closeness that left people vulnerable. And yet, the thought of facing this with him, absurd, terrifying, overwhelming as it was, also filled me with an unexpected warmth. The doctor's office felt like it had shrunk, the walls closing in, but Nathaniel didn't move away. Instead, he reached out, and our fingers intertwined naturally, like they had done 100 times before without ever acknowledging it. There was a calmness in that simple gesture that contradicted the chaos of the news. Somehow, in the middle of this storm, I found the beginnings of something resembling hope. "You know," I said, voice small, "I always thought the craziest thing that could happen to me would be, I don't know, getting fired in a humiliating way. Not this." Nathaniel laughed softly, and it was like sunlight cutting through a gray winter morning. "Life has a funny way of proving us wrong, Julian. But I promise we'll get through it. No running away, no pretending this isn't real." I wanted to argue, to retreat into my beta instincts and flee. But the truth was I couldn't. Not with him holding my hand. Not with the strange, stubborn sense of certainty that he inspired in me. I had wanted simple, predictable, safe, but Nathaniel had rewritten every expectation I ever had. And somehow, amidst the panic and confusion, that felt like a blessing. The nurse came back in, breaking the heavy silence. As she explained the next steps, Nathaniel stayed close, murmuring little reassurances, adjusting the strap of my bag, letting me lean on him in ways that felt both ridiculous and necessary. Every glance we shared carried the weight of unspoken understanding, the acknowledgement that our lives had collided in the most unpredictable, chaotic, and exhilarating way possible. Later, walking out of the clinic into the crisp Oregon air, I felt a mixture of fear, disbelief, and a strange fluttering excitement. Nathaniel's arm brushed mine, and this time I didn't recoil. Instead, I let myself lean in, just a little, feeling the warmth of him against my side. We didn't speak, didn't need to. The world stretched before us, uncertain and wide, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like maybe, just maybe, I wasn't alone in navigating it. We walked down the street in silence, side by side, the distant hum of traffic and occasional laughter from passing strangers filling the space around us. It was absurd, it was frightening, it was the beginning of everything. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew one thing. Wherever it led, Nathaniel Hayes and I would face it together, even if it meant rewriting every rule I'd ever lived by. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and violet, I allowed myself a rare, reckless thought. Maybe, just maybe, being pregnant as a beta wasn't the worst thing in the world, especially if the man beside me could make every impossible moment feel like a miracle. The walk back to my apartment felt surreal, like I was moving through someone else's life. Nathaniel matched my pace effortlessly, his presence both grounding and terrifyingly intimate. I kept glancing at him, trying to read the calm in his eyes, the quiet assurance in his posture. How could someone look so composed when our world had just been turned upside down? "I can't believe this is real," I muttered, more to myself than to him. "I mean, me, pregnant, a beta. This, how did it get this far?" Nathaniel tilted his head, a small smile tugging at his lips. "You act like you haven't been hinting at me for months." I stopped mid-step, glaring at him. "Hinting? I wasn't." "You were," he interrupted gently, brushing a hand across my shoulder. "Julian, I've been watching you avoid every excuse to let me in. And then that night." His voice softened, almost reverent. That night, I saw the walls come down. I felt heat rise to my cheeks, part embarrassment, part something more primal. I wanted to argue, wanted to hide behind my usual beta defenses, but the truth was stubborn and undeniable. That night hadn't been a mistake, it had been the first moment I had ever let myself really feel something without hesitation. And Nathaniel had felt it too. By the time we reached my apartment, the sun had completely set, leaving the sky a deep indigo dotted with stars. The quiet of the street was punctuated by distant traffic and the occasional bark of a dog. I fumbled with my keys, hands trembling, and Nathaniel reached over, guiding the key into the lock with his long fingers. That simple contact made my stomach flip. Inside, the apartment felt impossibly small, the reality of the news pressing down on me. Nathaniel leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, surveying the space as though preparing for battle. Or maybe just preparing to handle me. "So, what now?" I asked, voice barely above a whisper. "Now?" Nathaniel stepped closer, lowering his voice. We figure it out. Together. We adapt. We survive. And most importantly, he reached out, tilting my chin up so our eyes met. We don't panic alone. I wanted to scoff, to say that surviving with a cop who made my pulse spike every time he breathed in my direction was asking too much. But as I looked into his stormy eyes, I felt the first stirrings of trust, of something that might grow into something stronger than fear. Over the next few days, our routine shifted into a strange rhythm. Nathaniel came by almost every morning, ostensibly checking on me. Though it was clear he cared far more than the pretense allowed. He would sit in my tiny kitchen, sipping coffee, occasionally brushing his hand against mine, accidentally, as he reached for the sugar. Each contact sent shivers through me, a blend of longing, fear, and anticipation that left me breathless. And then there were the doctor's appointments, which were like navigating a minefield of emotions. Each visit brought a mix of excitement and terror. Every ultrasound image, every heartbeat, every tiny flicker of life inside me made reality hit harder. Nathaniel never left my side. He held my hand through every scan, whispered reassurances, and for the first time in my life, I felt the weight of love pressing gently, insistently, against my chest. One evening, after a particularly long appointment, Nathaniel walked me home under the soft glow of streetlights. Rain had started to fall, light at first, then heavier, soaking through our jackets. I shivered, half from the cold, half from the intensity of being so close to him. "You're freezing," he said, immediately taking off his jacket and draping it over my shoulders. His hand lingered for a heartbeat longer than necessary, sending warmth through my trembling body. "I'm fine," I murmured, though my lips betrayed the truth, quivering as they tried to smile. Nathaniel didn't let go of my hand as we continued down the street. "No, you're not. You're scared. And I'm not going to pretend that I'm not too. But we have this moment, this life. And we're going to protect it." The intensity in his gaze left me speechless. I realized then that I didn't just want him beside me because he had caused this chaos. I wanted him beside me because he made the chaos bearable. He made the impossible feel tangible, achievable, even beautiful. Days turned into weeks, and the pregnancy became the axis around which our lives rotated. Simple things like deciding what to eat, picking out baby clothes, or choosing names suddenly carried monumental weight. Nathaniel approached everything with a seriousness that both frustrated and comforted me. He wasn't just a cop. He was a protector, a planner, someone who could navigate danger and uncertainty with a level head that I desperately needed. But beneath that composure, there were moments where he let himself be vulnerable. One night, after a particularly stressful doctor visit, he sat on the edge of my couch, shoulders slumped, a rare crack in his armor. "I've never done this before," he admitted quietly, voice low and unsteady. "I've protected people, arrested people, made sure the world doesn't fall apart. But this is different. I'm supposed to keep you safe, but I don't even know if I can handle it." I sat beside him, heart aching at the sight of his vulnerability. I reached out, threading my fingers through his, feeling the tension in his muscles slowly unwind. "Then we learn," I said softly, surprising even myself with the firmness in my voice. "We figure it out together. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be here." Nathaniel's eyes softened, gratitude and something deeper flashing across his storm-gray irises. He leaned in, resting his forehead against mine. "You really mean that?" "I do," I whispered, letting myself lean into him, feeling the solid weight of his presence. It was grounding, reassuring, and terrifying all at once. Our nights became a delicate dance of proximity and restraint. Touching hands, leaning against one another, stolen kisses in dimly lit kitchen sit was intoxicating and maddening. Every brush of his fingers across my skin sent sparks up my spine, reminding me of the intense, unpredictable bond we had formed. And despite the chaos, despite the fear and uncertainty, there was something undeniably comforting about these small, intimate moments. One evening, as rain pelted against the windows and the city lights blurred into a soft haze, Nathaniel finally let go of his restraint. He pulled me close, hands tracing the outline of my body as if memorizing every inch. I didn't resist, didn't shy away, because for the first time in my life I didn't want to. The world outside, our neighbors, the traffic, the rain ceased to exist. All that mattered was the warmth, the closeness, the undeniable tension that had been building for months. Julian. His voice was rough, low, a mixture of desire and something more profound. You have no idea how much I've wanted this. You. Everything. I swallowed hard, my pulse racing. Nathaniel. Words failed me, replaced by the intensity of the moment, by the helpless yearning that had been simmering for far too long. He silenced me with a kiss, slow and deliberate, holding me close as if he could shield me from every fear, every doubt. In that kiss, there was no urgency, no recklessness, only connection, intimacy, and an overwhelming sense of trust. In the following weeks, our bond deepened. We navigated appointments, baby preparations, and the gossiping eyes of neighbors and colleagues with a united front. Nathaniel became more than just the man who had inadvertently caused my pregnancy. He became my anchor, my confidant, my unexpected home. And I, in turn, learned to let go of my beta instincts, to overthink, to avoid, to fear. I learned that vulnerability could be met with care, that chaos could be tempered with love, and that sometimes the most unpredictable events could lead to the most profound happiness. But life has a way of testing even the strongest bonds. One afternoon, as we were leaving the pediatrician for a routine checkup, Nathaniel's phone buzzed relentlessly. He glanced at the screen, brow furrowing, and I sensed the shift immediately. "What's wrong?" I asked, heart sinking. Nathaniel hesitated, then slipped the phone into his pocket. "Work. There's a situation. I need to go." Panic bubbled in my chest, fear gripping me in a way I hadn't felt in months. "You can't leave. Not now. Not with everything." "I have to," he replied, his hand on my shoulder, grounding me even as he prepared to step into danger. "But I'll be back. Promise. You and the baby are my priority. Nothing comes before that." And with that, he was gone, leaving me standing in the drizzle, heart pounding, torn between fear and trust. I clutched my belly, feeling the subtle flutter of life within, and whispered a silent plea, not just for Nathaniel's safety, but for the fragile, chaotic, and beautiful life we had begun to build together. In that moment, I understood fully. Love wasn't about predictability or safety. It was about facing the impossible together, holding on when the world threatened to tear you apart, and finding warmth, intimacy, and hope in the unlikeliest of places. The next few weeks were a delicate balancing act. Nathaniel's shifts at the precinct became longer, more unpredictable, yet he never failed to check in texts, calls, and brief visits whenever he could. I learned to read the small signs of his exhaustion, the subtle slump in his shoulders, the tension in his jaw. And every time he returned, soaked or tired, the sight of him grounding himself beside me made all the fear melt away. We decorated the nursery in secret bursts of energy and creativity. Nathaniel insisted on painting the walls a soft, calming gray, while I argued for the occasional pop of colora, playful yellow or serene teal. Each object we placed, each toy we arranged, became a symbol of our shared commitment, a tangible marker of a life growing inside me. Even when disagreements arose, our touches, accidental or deliberate, always reminded us why we were doing this together. One night, as the baby's first kicks became unmistakable, Nathaniel and I sat on the couch, my legs tucked against his side. He rested his hand on my belly, his thumb tracing gentle circles. "Feeling that?" he asked softly. "Yes," I whispered, leaning into his chest. "It's incredible. Terrifying, but incredible." He chuckled, the sound warm and grounding. "You think I don't feel it too? That tiny reminder that we're creating something real, something permanent." I smiled, overwhelmed by a mix of love, fear, and anticipation. "I don't know how we're doing this, but I do know I couldn't do it without you." Nathaniel pressed a kiss to my temple, a gesture of devotion that left me breathless. You'll never have to. We're in this together, Julian. Always. As my pregnancy advanced, so did our intimacy, not just physically, but emotionally. We shared vulnerabilities that neither of us had expressed to anyone else. Nathaniel confessed his doubts, his fears of inadequacy, his struggles with responsibility. I admitted my insecurities, my fear of failing as a parent, my tendency to overthink and avoid. Together, we held each other, learning that vulnerability could coexist with strength, that intimacy was not just physical but deeply emotional. The months passed, filled with laughter, small frustrations, tender moments, and the quiet reassurance of constant presence. Nathaniel often joked about our domestic chaos, the endless paperwork for parental leave, the mountain of baby clothes, and the awkward glances from neighbors. Each joke, each shared glance, built a deeper understanding between USA knowledge that no matter how unpredictable life became, we would navigate it side by side. Finally, the day arrived. The contractions began unexpectedly, sharp and relentless, and I barely had time to call Nathaniel before the panic set in. Within minutes, he was at my side, grabbing the bag we had prepared weeks in advance, his calmness a stark contrast to the storm of fear and excitement raging through me. "You're doing this," he said firmly, eyes locked on mine. "I'm right here, every step. We've got this." The labor was intense, exhausting, and filled with moments of sheer terror and elation. Nathaniel held my hand, murmuring encouragement, wiping my forehead, and refusing to leave my side for even a second. When the moment came, when the first cry pierced the air, tears streamed down my face as we met our child's gaze together. Nathaniel leaned down, brushing a kiss against my temple. "We did it. Look at what we made." I laughed through tears, shaking my head in disbelief. "We really did it. We actually did it." Holding our baby together, I realized that every chaotic, terrifying, and unpredictable moment of the past months had led to this. A life we created, nurtured, and promised to protect. Nathaniel's hand on my back, our fingers intertwined, and the warmth of his embrace reminded me that love, in all its messy, unpredictable glory, could be the most grounding force of all. As the days turned into weeks, we settled into a rhythm. Nathaniel took parental leave, supporting me through feedings, sleepless nights, and the overwhelming beauty of early parenthood. We laughed at our mistakes, celebrated small victories, and discovered a deeper connection than either of us had imagined possible. One quiet evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the room in shades of gold and violet, Nathaniel and I sat together, our baby nestled between us. He traced gentle patterns across my hand, his gaze warm and tender. "Julian," he murmured, voice soft, "I never thought I'd find this kind of love. Not like this. Not with you. But here we are. And I wouldn't trade it for anything." I smiled, pressing my forehead to his. "Me neither. It's scary, it's chaotic, it's unpredictable. And it's perfect." We leaned back, holding each other and our child, feeling the quiet power of a family born from chaos, vulnerability, and unwavering trust. For the first time in my life, I felt truly seen, completely loved, and endlessly hopeful for the future. Because love, I realized, wasn't about certainty or predictability. It was about showing up, holding on, and choosing each other every single day, even when the world tried to pull you apart. And as Nathaniel's hand settled over mine, the warmth of his presence a constant reassurance, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, we would face them together, beta, cop, and child-bound by a love that had turned fear into joy, chaos into home, and uncertainty into hope. The storm had passed, and in its wake, we had found something enduring, intimate, and profoundly human: each other. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.